Post 1, I am a male in my early 30s. I keep our bills current, I plan for renewals, and I am the one with the steadier income. My girlfriend and I have been together 3 years. We do not have kids. I handle rent from my account, and she transfers her share. I also cover the internet, utilities, and most groceries, partly because I earn more, and partly because I am just the person who worries about due dates. I do not say that to make myself sound like a hero. It is just the rhythm we fell into. She used to say she liked that I was a calm, reliable guy. Lately, she has been calling me comfortable in a way that sounds like an insult. Last week, she asked if we could sit and talk without phones. She used that exact phrase. I felt this jump in my chest that something was off, but I tried to keep my face neutral. She started with a lot of words about honesty, growth, and modern relationships. Then she said she has feelings for my boss. She said they have been spending time after work, and it feels like the kind of connection people are supposed to chase. She called it growth again. She said she wanted to be honest instead of sneaking around, and she wanted me to respect her enough to let her explore it. I had this weird out-of-body moment where I watched my hands stay very still on the table while inside my stomach dropped. She said she would like a trial separation. She would move into a studio for a few months. She asked me to keep paying the big bills in the meantime because it is not like she is leaving me for good, and stability would be kind. I asked what stability means. She said I should keep rent in my name, cover the internet and utilities, and we would settle up later when she knew how she felt. She added that since I make more, this would not be a hardship. She said she was telling me in good faith so there would be no drama. Then she smiled like we had accomplished something mature. I said I would not agree to an open relationship. If she is with my boss, I am not her boyfriend. I also said I would not fund her dating life. My voice was very flat and I could hear it. She said I was being reactive and small. She said adults try new configurations without punishing each other. She kept saying try. I kept thinking about HR. My hands were still on the table. After she left for a shift that evening, I opened my laptop and wrote down the timeline of what she said. I screenshotted my calendar, the messages she had sent asking me to pick up groceries on nights she said she was staying late, and the meeting invitations that had come from my boss at odd times. I wrote a factual email to HR asking for guidance because there is now a conflict of interest, and I report directly to the person who is dating my partner. I did not add opinions. I did not accuse anyone of misconduct beyond the obvious power dynamic. I asked to be moved off his chain while this is assessed. I included the bare facts and attached nothing personal. It felt robotic but safe. In the morning, I told her I had reported the conflict to HR and that any work talk about my boss would need to go through the proper channels. I also said if she wanted to separate, we could work out a fair split until the end of the lease, but I would not cover a new apartment for her. She said I had blindsided her. She said she told me in good faith, and my first move was to snitch, which is a word that made me feel 12 years old. She said I was trying to ruin a connection that made her feel alive. She said I was manipulating money to control her. I wanted to say a lot of things, but I just wrote back that any financial agreement would be in writing and based on the lease we both signed. No insults, no speeches. She sent a paragraph about how sad it is that I cannot imagine love as abundant. Then a screenshot of a cute studio and the deposit number, followed by a question mark. At lunch, my boss removed me from a client call with no explanation. It could be unrelated, but my brain connected dots. I forwarded that to HR with a calm note asking whether I should attend future calls while the reassignment is pending. HR replied quickly that they had my report and would follow up. I sat in my car and tried to breathe in counts of 4 like people say to do. I felt angry, embarrassed, and also weirdly guilty for not wanting to be the flexible one. I kept asking myself if I am dramatic for going to HR instead of letting it ride for a week. But then I pictured trying to speak up later and everyone saying I should have told someone sooner. I work in a field where documentation matters, so I documented. That night she texted me that her friends think I am vindictive and that actual grown-ups can do open relationships. I am not judging anyone who does that. I am saying I am not consenting to it. I told her again I will not support 2 households and that I am willing to do a written plan for the remainder of our lease. She said if I were more romantic, I would fight for her. I do not understand how fighting fits here when the person you are supposed to fight is your manager. I feel pulled in two directions. One part of me wants to keep being the nice guy who does not make a fuss. The other part of me knows that letting this slide makes me quietly complicit in my own humiliation. I set a boundary. I went to HR with facts, not gossip. I said I will not pay her deposit. Now I am being told I am controlling and small. I keep second-guessing the sequence of my steps, even though the steps are boring and adult. I hate that I am asking the internet, but here I am. Am I the jerk for refusing to bankroll my girlfriend while she dates my boss and for reporting the conflict to HR? Comment 1. Not the jerk. You reported a clear conflict and set a clean boundary. Keep everything in writing, no meetings without HR, and do not pay for a new apartment. Calm beats grand gestures here. Comment 2. You handled this exactly right. Separate the relationship issue from the workplace issue. HR for work, written plan for the lease, and no funding her experiment. Update 1. Some people asked if I had proof or if I embellished what she said. I did not record her. I wrote the timeline right after the conversation while it was fresh. I also screenshotted the text where she called it growth and asked me to keep rent and utilities in my name while she got a studio. I sent myself an email with those screenshots, so there is a date trail. For HR, I only included the non-personal parts. A couple of you said to keep relationship details out of the workplace report, so I did that. The report says, I report to Manager X. My girlfriend disclosed a relationship with Manager X. I am requesting reassignment to remove the conflict. That is it. No adjectives. HR responded that they have opened a preliminary review and scheduled me with an HR generalist and an HR BP from my department. They told me not to discuss the matter with the manager and to route all project questions through a neutral coordinator until the meeting. That instruction felt like a weighted blanket. I did not realize how much I was bracing until I read it, and my shoulders dropped. Meanwhile, my girlfriend pivoted to practical demands. She sent me a list of studio options and asked me to Venmo the deposit because it makes no sense for her to lose out over logistics. I told her again that I would not fund a second household and that I am willing to keep paying our current bills according to the lease until we agree on an end date. I put it in writing and I tried to keep it short. She came back with a longer message about how money should not be used to punish. She said I benefit from my higher income and that kindness here would show I respect her honesty. She also said if I cared, I would not run to HR before we had time to process. I said HR exists to prevent conflicts, and I do not want to be accused later of hiding a power dynamic. Her friends escalated it. There is a group chat of her college friends plus some new people from her yoga studio. I am in it for event planning and rides, not as an active poster. I woke up to 30 unread messages with my name sprinkled through them. The theme was that real adults can handle non-traditional arrangements and that I am making it transactional. One person wrote that a deposit is not a big ask, that I should be grateful she told me instead of cheating. I stared at that sentence so long the phone dimmed. I kept thinking that if the roles were reversed, no one would tell her to bankroll my new romance. I did not respond in the chat. I texted her privately that the group chat should not be a venue for our bills and that I would like us to keep finances between us in writing. She replied with a sad face and said she would never have done this if she knew I would turn into a bureaucrat. Work got weird in small ways. My boss canceled a one-on-one that had been on the calendar for weeks. He did not reschedule. A peer messaged me that the boss asked if I could be taken off a client because I seemed distracted. I forwarded that to HR with a neutral line asking whether to continue client work under the interim coordinator. HR said yes, proceed through the coordinator, and log any changes in scope or schedule. Writing that email felt both petty and necessary, like labeling every box before a move. My mother called after my girlfriend spoke to her. My mother said she never pictured me as the kind of man who brings work into his personal life. I tried to explain that the reverse happened, that personal life arrived at work wearing a key card. She told me to consider the long game and not burn bridges. I said doing nothing would also burn bridges, just slower and with me inside. She sighed and said I always take things literally. Later, my cousin sent a 2-sentence text, I see you. You are not wrong. I sat in the parking lot and read those 2 sentences 3 times and cried. It was not loud crying, just the kind where your face leaks because you are tired of explaining why the obvious is obvious. I met with HR this morning. They took notes. They asked me to confirm that my girlfriend used the word relationship and that the manager is currently in my reporting chain. I said yes. They asked me to confirm that I did not discuss performance or pressure with the manager. I said I have not spoken to him about anything except forwarding scheduling questions through the temporary coordinator. They thanked me for documenting dates and for not adding commentary. They said their next step is to interview the manager and propose a temporary reassignment that keeps me on my projects without requiring manager input. They suggested I avoid one-on-one conversations with the manager and let them know if I experience any changes in responsibilities, access, or feedback that coincide with the report. Leaving that room, I felt something like relief that there is a process. Then I remembered I still have to go home. When I got back, there was a cardboard box in the hallway and a text asking if she could swing by tonight to pick up her camera and a bag of winter clothes. I replied with a written inventory and proposed time windows tomorrow when my neighbor could be present as a witness. She said I am making this hostile and that this is not a divorce. I told her I am not trying to punish. I am trying not to have a scene. I also told her again I will not pay a deposit on a studio. 30 seconds later, the group chat pinged with a screenshot of my reply and a caption that said, "Look how cold he is." I muted the thread. I am second-guessing myself in loops. The part I keep tripping on is the deposit. It would be so easy to pay it and tell myself I am being compassionate. But paying it makes a shape around me that I do not want to live inside. I am scared of looking like the punitive one. I am also scared of teaching myself that I will sponsor my own replacement if someone says the word growth in a nice voice. So here is where things stand. HR is involved. I am routed through a neutral coordinator. I am documenting calmly. I have refused to pay her deposit but will honor the lease. I am insisting on written logistics and third-party presence for item pickups. My mother thinks I am dramatic. A cousin quietly agrees with me. Her friends think I am small. I feel steadier than I did, but the doubts still knock. Am I the jerk for refusing to cover her new apartment deposit and for involving HR right away instead of giving it time to blow over? Comment 1. Not the jerk. Deposit refusal is a boundary, not a punishment. Keep everything in writing, log all work changes, and let HR do their job. Comment 2. You are doing the boring, strong thing. Do not let a group chat set your financial ethics. Written inventory and a witness for pickup is exactly right. Update 2. Thank you to everyone who said to keep it calm and boring. I needed those words because the last 48 hours have been loud in every other sense. I promised receipts, so here is what happened. HR moved quickly. They put in writing that while they review the conflict, I will route project work through a neutral coordinator and avoid one-on-one contact with my manager. They also said any performance feedback must be documented by the coordinator, not the manager. That email ended a background hum I did not realize I was still hearing. I forwarded it to my personal account and a hard copy to a folder at home. Paper feels like something I can hold. An hour later, my manager sent me a written critique. It listed 3 supposed misses from last week. 2 were meetings I did not attend because he canceled them. The third was a deliverable that the coordinator had already marked complete. I attached the calendar cancellations, the coordinator's completion email, and the original project plan, and I forwarded the critique to HR. My note was nothing but dates and attachments. HR replied that they had added it to the file and would address it. I felt my face flush reading the critique, like I had been caught cheating on a test I did not know I was taking. The flush went away after I stapled everything to the copy in my folder. At home, my girlfriend texted that she wanted to come by that evening for the camera and winter clothes. I had already offered a daytime window with our neighbor present to witness. She said that was inconvenient because her yoga class ends at 8. I repeated the daytime window and the witness requirement. 10 minutes later, the group chat lit up with a screenshot of my message. The caption said, "He will only let me grab a sweater with a chaperone." The replies were a chorus about control. One person wrote, "He is turning a breakup into court." I typed 3 separate replies and deleted them. I muted the thread again. I got a call from my mother right after. She said my girlfriend had told her I was threatening to lock her out. I told my mother that I gave 3 daytime pickup windows and a simple inventory, and that we still share the apartment until we sign a termination date. I said no one is locked out. My mother said I sounded like a lawyer, and that is not attractive. I told her I am not trying to be attractive. I am trying to be accurate. She said she missed when I was easygoing. I said I missed when I did not have to set a schedule to retrieve a camera. Because a few people asked about money, here is the exact arrangement I proposed in writing. We continue paying rent in the proportions we already use until we set a move-out date. Groceries are separate. I will not pay a deposit for a second place. Utilities continue as is, and we settle the final bills at move-out with screenshots. She responded that she would not agree to cold math, and that kindness should guide the numbers. I said kindness here looks like clarity because we disagree. The public part ramped up after that. My girlfriend posted a black screen with white text about honesty being punished, about trying to do relationships the modern way and getting snitched on. Comments were supportive of her in a general motivational quote way. 2 mutual friends sent me the post and asked what happened. I said I would not discuss it and that I hoped they were well. One of them replied, "She says you got her boyfriend in trouble at work." I wrote back, "I reported a conflict of interest because the person she is dating manages my evaluations. HR handles the rest." The friend wrote, "That sounds intense." I said, "It is precise." HR asked me to come in for a second meeting to review the critique in my attachments. They also said they would interview 2 peers who sit next to me. I left that meeting feeling steadier. It is not vindication, it is procedure. Procedure is enough right now. The attempted escalation at home came right after. Despite my repeated daytime offers, my girlfriend showed up at 9 at night with the manager in the hallway. She texted, "I am here, let me in. He is just helping me carry the bin." Despite the bin in the hallway plan I'd already sent in writing, she tried to come inside anyway. The manager was visible through the peephole, leaning on the door frame like he belonged in the building. I did not open the door. I replied, "Pickup times are tomorrow at noon or 3, with neighbor present. I will set the bin outside at noon if you confirm." She texted, "You are making a scene." I said, "I am preventing one." She knocked twice. I called the front desk and asked security to please remind them that visitors need to be invited in. Security came, asked them to move to the lobby, and they left after 5 minutes. I felt shaky afterward, like my bones were buzzing. I made tea and wrote the time and wording of each text in my notebook. The buzzing faded as the lines of ink filled the page. This morning, the manager replied to an old thread about a client and tried to restart direct communication. He wrote, "We can coordinate this one off channel to keep speed." I did not respond. I forwarded it to HR and the coordinator and asked for confirmation that I should continue routing through the coordinator. The coordinator replied yes and copied HR. HR thanked me for following instructions. I printed those 2 emails. It might sound obsessive that I print things. Holding paper is the opposite of doom scrolling. It slows my hands down. One unexpected bright spot: a colleague dropped a sticky note on my desk that said, "You are not crazy." That was all. We are not close, and I will not name them here, but I sat with that note for 5 minutes and let myself believe it. Later, a cousin who had texted support before sent me a link to a short article about not using money to buy peace. I am not normally a quote person. It still helped. I am not asking the AITA question this time because I think the shape of right and wrong is clearer in me now. I do not need a crowd to tell me not to pay a deposit for my girlfriend to move out and date my boss. I do not need a crowd to tell me to route everything through HR. I am grateful for the reminders to keep it boring and documented. I hear those in my head when my phone lights up with someone performing heartbreak in a font. What comes next is more of the same. Scheduled pickup tomorrow at noon with a neighbor present, utilities separated this week, and HR's process continuing. I will not be in a hallway argument. I will not respond to group chat screenshots. I will not meet my manager off channel. I will keep labeling boxes, literal and figurative, and carrying them to the door. Comment 1. This is exactly how you ride out a storm without letting it tip you. You are not cold. You are careful. Keep logging everything, hold firm on the pickup windows, and let HR collect the patterns. Comment 2. Printing feels old school, but it is smart when people start rewriting history. You are doing fine. Update 3. I did not realize how much I was still waiting for permission to stand up until HR gave it to me in very plain words. Yesterday morning, HR emailed me a formal interim measures memo. From this point on, I'll refer to him as my former manager. It says I am reassigned to a neutral manager effective immediately, that all performance feedback must come through that manager, and that my former manager is restricted from contact with me outside group meetings chaired by the coordinator. It also says the company prohibits retaliation and gives a list of examples that read like someone watched my week through the peephole. Surprise critiques, removing me from meetings, off-channel coordination. Seeing those bullet points made me feel seen in a dry policy way that is somehow better than being comforted. I printed the memo and put it in my folder. 10 minutes later, my former manager sent a calendar invite for a quick sync in a conference room with just his name on it. I stared at the invite for a full minute in this blank way where your eyes see letters and your brain shows nothing. Then I forwarded it to HR and the coordinator and asked for guidance. HR wrote back within 5 minutes. Decline the invite, and if he approaches in person, you are to refer him to this email. My hand did not shake hitting decline. That is new. He did approach in person about an hour after. He pretended not to notice the reassignment and said we should clear the air so we can control the narrative before it spreads. I said I have been instructed to route communications through HR and the coordinator. He widened his eyes in this slow, disappointed way and said he thought I was more mature. I repeated word for word that HR had restricted one-on-one contact and all work talk had to route through the coordinator. The coordinator walked up at the end like a lifeguard and asked if we needed a room with him present. My former manager said, "No, we are done here." It was not dramatic. It was flat. Flat is good. At home, the pickup finally happened, mostly because I removed all other options. I emailed my girlfriend a simple document the night before. List of items she asked for, 2-time windows, my neighbor's name, a reminder that I will place the box in the hallway at the start of the window, and that any additional items should be requested by email. I also added a line that made my stomach lurch to type, even though it is boring. If you arrive outside the window, building policy requires you to be in the lobby until a resident escorts you. She replied with a single word, hostile. I did not reply. She showed up on time. The neighbor stood in the doorway and said hello. She pushed past him anyway and tried to open the bedroom door. I said calmly that she needed to stick to the list today, that we will schedule a furniture walkthrough with the rental office if she wants more. She said loudly that I was holding her belongings hostage. The neighbor, who is a school counselor, did something brilliant. He said, "Let's take photos of what is here and sign that these items are going with you. That way we have a count." The word count calmed the air. She took the camera and the bag of clothes. She asked for the cast iron pan we bought together. I said we would sort shared items at the walkthrough. She rolled her eyes and said, "Instagram's going to love this." Then she left. I wrote "pickup complete" on the inventory. We both signed, and I scanned it into the folder. The house felt huge for about 10 minutes, then normal. The public scene came later, not at my door, but at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. I went because I had RSVP'd months ago. I sat at the far end of a long table with too many chairs squeezed together, the kind where you have to pass fries down a human chain. Halfway through, she and my former manager walked in together. The room went still in the subtle way where forks still move but necks stop. They did not sit with us. They hovered near the bar in that way, where you can claim you are just here for a drink, but your eyes are measuring reactions. I decided in advance not to leave unless the host asked me to. I did not make eye contact. I focused on a story my friend was telling about a suitcase that split open. Someone at our table whispered, "Do you want to move?" I said, "I am fine." Saying I am fine was true in a literal way. I could sit, chew, listen, and breathe. It felt like winning quietly. When I got home, there was a new post from her. It said she tried to collect basic winter clothes, and I made her sign a contract like a landlord. She ended with a line about how some people use rules because they are afraid of feelings. I did not reply. A few hours later, a smaller account posted a photo of my former manager's hand on her shoulder at the bar. The caption was a timeline that made no sense if you have a calendar. I did not reply to that either. I did email HR the photo with a single sentence. FYI, they came to a mutual friend's private event tonight and stood by our group for 15 minutes. HR responded that personal events are outside scope, but if I felt harassed, I could submit a workplace safety concern. I did not feel harassed. I felt observed. Observed is annoying but not actionable. I went to bed. This morning I stopped apologizing for being orderly. That sentence sounds silly written down. I have been writing sorry for the formality at the end of my emails. Today I wrote, please confirm receipt. It felt like removing an ankle weight. I sent a formal notice proposing a lease-in date in 6 weeks with a prorated split and a checklist for utilities, forwarding, and cleaning. I gave her 2 days to agree or counter in writing. My mother texted that I am being cold. I wrote back that clarity is care. I think I believe that now, not just say it. There was also a small thing at work that would have flattened me a week ago and now just slid off. A calendar hold for a performance alignment appeared on my schedule, created by my former manager's executive assistant. It had the wrong manager listed. I forwarded it to HR and the new manager with the memo attached and asked if I should remove it or if they would. My new manager removed it and wrote, we will control your calendar. You focus on deliverables. I printed that and added it to the folder too, not because I think it will be needed, but because it reminds me that someone else is doing their part. I am noticing that every time I replace a reaction with a procedure, the accusations change shape but lose force. She says I am a landlord. He says I am immature. My mother says I am literal. The group chat says I am controlling. Those are all poems that rhyme with the same accusation. You are not giving us your soft parts to organize? That is correct. My soft parts belong to me. Tomorrow I will meet again with HR to sign the formal reassignment paperwork. This weekend I will box the shared kitchen items on the list and take photos of each box. I will also meet a realtor about a short-term sublet near my new office, in case she refuses the proposed end date and I need to exit sooner using the clause in the lease. None of those are punishments. They are ways to walk forward on real floors instead of sliding on feelings. I do not have a fresh AIDA question because this does not feel like a morality puzzle anymore. It feels like a moving checklist. I am not trying to be admired. I am trying to leave with my job intact and my self-respect unpawned. Comment 1. You named it. Clarity is care. For yourself, for records, and frankly, even for her. The inventory and windows prevented a fight. Keep doing the unglamorous steps. It is working. Comment 2. You followed policy, refused the off-channel end run, and handled the restaurant ambush by doing nothing. That is textbook. The lack of apology in your emails is not cold. It is professional. Update 4. I met with HR again and signed the interim reassignment paperwork. It was short and strangely comforting. It said exactly what the memo said, in plainer lines. New manager on record, old manager barred from one-on-ones, feedback only through the new manager, retaliation prohibited. HR also asked whether I wanted to file a formal safety concern about the appearance at the birthday dinner. I said no. I told them I am documenting, I am fine, and I want to do my job. Right after that meeting, I received an invite for a culture fit roundtable hosted by my old manager and 2 senior leads who are friendly with him. I felt my mouth go dry. It read like a soft attempt to reassert authority. I forwarded the invite to HR and my new manager with one line asking whether I should attend. HR replied they would handle, asked me not to engage, and canceled the session for conflict with ongoing review. 5 minutes later, my old manager messaged, "You did not need to escalate. We could have fixed this as adults." I did not respond. HR wrote separately and asked me to forward any direct messages from him without commentary. I felt folded inside a tent with the sides zipped. Protection is not the same as peace, but it is something. At home, I sent the lease proposal I mentioned before. 6 weeks prorated in our usual split, utilities settled by screenshots, and a furniture walkthrough at the end with the rental office. I gave her 2 days to accept or counter in writing. She replied with a paragraph about romance and how love cannot be scheduled. I repeated my proposal and the deadline. She did not respond that night. The next morning, she called my mother. I know because my mother called me and said I was throwing away a good woman over a technicality. I said, this is not a technicality. This is a boundary. I said the lease proposal is fair. My mother said she will not pick sides, but she thinks I am making it transactional. I said that is why it will work. My mother hung up with a sigh that felt like a grade. By noon, my girlfriend posted a photo from a gym mirror and a caption that said she is not a possession and she will not be dragged by men who fear strong feelings. The comments were full of flame emojis and sayings about honesty. 10 minutes later, she texted me to say she rejects my lease plan because it is hostile. She wanted half the rent for 1 month only, and then for me to keep the apartment alone while she pursues growth. She also wanted me to reimburse half her studio deposit, which she paid herself after I refused. I wrote back that I will not fund her new household and that our lease is joint. I gave her the deadline again. This time I added a line I had been putting off. If we do not have a signed agreement by the deadline, I will initiate the early termination clause through the building, and we will both receive the move-out schedule from the rental office. My hands shook a little typing that. I sent it anyway. She replied within 2 minutes with a wall of text about punishment. I did not answer. I emailed the rental office asking for the early termination packet and the checklist. They replied within the hour with a clear list of steps and the cost. I forwarded that to her with the subject line, "If no agreement by Friday, this begins Monday." Then I turned my phone face down and worked. At 3, my old manager tried a last-in run. He replied to an ancient client thread with an attachment titled Ad Hoc Alignment and wrote that we could handle a backlog in 15 minutes if I jumped on a quick call. I forwarded it to HR and the new manager and asked for instruction. The new manager wrote, "Do not engage. I will address." 15 minutes later, the thread had a note from HR reminding the team about interim measures and asking that all requests go through the coordinator. I printed it for the folder. I am running out of staples. That evening, she arrived during the scheduled window with 2 friends. My neighbor was there, and I had the inventory sheets ready. She announced that she would take the television and the cast iron set because she is starting over and deserves basics. I said shared items will be sorted at the furniture walkthrough or deducted from the final settlement. She raised her voice. One friend filmed. My neighbor, patient as ever, suggested we add television disputed to the inventory and move on. We did. She took her clothes and a few books. As she left, she said, loud enough for the hall, "He is trying to evict me." I replied, quiet enough for the paper, "We have a lease. If we do not sign a private agreement by Friday, the building will give both of us the same move-out date." She shook her head like I had spoken another language. Her friend posted a clip later. The caption said, "Controlling men love paperwork." The clip cuts off before my sentence about the building. I did not reply. Friday arrived. She did not sign. I delivered the termination packet to the rental office and copied her on the email. The office scheduled the move-out in 6 weeks, attached a checklist, and listed the fees and deposits. I paid my half of the termination fee the same day and sent her the invoice for her half. She sent back a single sentence, "I will not pay to be punished." I forwarded the invoice and her reply to a separate email thread labeled lease. I marked the date in the notebook. Then I booked a short-term sublet near my new office in case there was turbulence near the end. I also retained a consultation with an employment attorney. I have not filed anything. I just wanted a professional to look at my folder and say whether it is as neat as I think it is. He said it is, and that the company's interim measures are strong. He suggested one change at work: move all saved emails off my local machine to the company e-discovery hold that HR offered, so I am not accused of hoarding documents. I did that the same afternoon and sent HR a note confirming. They thanked me for being conscientious. What broke in me this week was the reflex to pre-apologize. I set an ultimatum and followed it. I did not yell. I did not post. I did not pay a deposit for a studio. I did not accept a secret meeting with a manager. I did not let a hallway turn into a courtroom. I am not proud or triumphant. I am tired and steady. Am I the jerk for initiating the early lease termination when she refused to sign our private agreement, and for declining every off-channel attempt at a conversation with my former manager? Comment 1. Not the jerk. You gave a fair private option, a clear deadline, and then moved to the building's neutral process. That is not punishment. That is adult. Comment 2. Declining the round table and the quick sync was correct. Every one of those was a trap. You used the company's process. Keep using it. Update 5. I thought signing the early termination packet would calm the noise. It trimmed it, but it did not end it. The building posted our move-out date and the checklist in the tenant portal. I paid my half of the termination fee and sent the invoice for her half again. She replied that she would not fund punishment, and then her friends posted a carousel about paper weaponizers. I kept my promise to myself and said nothing in public. I sent one short email that said the invoice remains due and that unpaid balances will be settled from the damage deposit per the lease. Our lease explicitly allows the building to deduct unpaid balances from each tenant's share of the security deposit, so I noted that for her in the same email. Then I closed the tab. The pressure campaign peaked the next day. My mother texted me a long paragraph about forgiveness and how I am letting work poison my personal life. She wrote that a man is supposed to lead with heart. I called her because texts make both of us theatrical. I said, as gently as I could, that leading with heart is how I paid for most of our household for years, and that my heart is tired. I said the lease plan is fair. She said fairness is cold. I said fairness is the only thing that holds when people disagree. She said she will always love me, and then added that she hopes I do not become someone no one can live with. I thanked her for the love. I did not answer the rest. Work had one last wobble. My former manager submitted a concerns about collaboration note to HR. It was 2 bullet points about me being rigid with process and hard to reach off channel. HR interviewed the coordinator and my new manager the same afternoon. The coordinator produced a spreadsheet showing my response times and handoffs. My new manager forwarded 3 client notes praising the clarity of our new process. HR told me in writing that the concern was closed with no action and reminded my former manager that interim measures remain in effect. Reading that email, I felt the last piece click into place. People can write any story they want about my personality. The records keep telling the same one. The last attempt at a scene came at the apartment. The rental office scheduled our final walkthrough to inventory shared furniture. I asked for a weekday morning with the staff member present. She asked for a Friday night so her friends could help. I said weekday morning. She arrived 10 minutes late with the same 2 friends who had filmed before. The staff member was there, and my neighbor joined again. We walked room to room. She pointed at the television and the cast iron set and said, "Mine." I said shared items will be split by value against the final settlement. The staff member nodded and wrote "disputed" next to both. One friend muttered that I am turning love into math. The staff member smiled politely and said, "This is literally a checklist." We finished in 20 minutes. She asked if she could leave a few boxes for me to ship to her studio. I said no. She said that is unkind. I said that is a separate service with a price tag, and I am not a shipping company. There was a tremble in my chest. I kept my voice level. The staff member thanked us for being efficient. Efficiency felt like a compliment in that room. 3 hours later, a new post went up accusing me of evicting a woman into winter. A mutual friend sent it to me with a question mark. I wrote back one sentence. "We have a joint lease ending on a date set by the building." They did not reply. Another friend texted that my girlfriend is hurting and I could make it easier by paying the last month for her. I stared at my phone, then put it face down and folded laundry. It turns out there is a limit to how many times you can explain why a boundary is a boundary to people who prefer parables. On the Wednesday before move-out, I got an offer from a competitor that had been quietly interviewing me for weeks. It was not revenge, it was practical. The comp is higher. The manager introduced himself as someone who prefers boring to dramatic. I accepted. I sent HR a short email with my signed offer letter and my notice period. HR replied that they will transition me to the new manager for the remainder of my time and that the interim measures stand until my last day. I printed that for the folder, not because I plan to use it, but because I like finishing as I started. Move out was not cinematic. She took her boxes in the first hour, signed the walkthrough, and left without speaking. I cleaned the oven and wiped the baseboards because those are the things deposit deductions hide inside. I turned in my keys and took a photo of the empty rooms. I sent the final utility screenshots to her with the exact cent splits. She responded with a single word, cold. I did not reply. The rental office processed the deposit and sent both of us the itemized list. Her half of the termination fee and unpaid utilities came out of her portion. I saved the PDF and closed the file forever. I booked a short sublet near my new office and put the folder in a drawer. Then I went for a long walk with my phone on Do Not Disturb. I expected to feel triumphant. I felt quiet. I kept thinking about how many moments in the last month went fine because I did nothing more than point at a line and say, "We agreed to meet here." It is not heroic, it is just finally believing myself. I will answer one more time because the last big move was mine. Am I the jerk for holding the line on the lease, on the money, and on the HR process until the very end, even when people called me cold? Comment 1. Not the jerk. You offered a fair private plan, then used the building's neutral process when she refused. You kept HR in the loop and never met off-channel. That is boundaries, not cruelty. Comment 2. You chose boring over chaos every single time. The accusations changed, your actions did not. That is why you got out clean. Proud of you for not paying to be replaced. Final update, 11 months later. 11 months is long enough for the loud parts to fade and the small, useful routines to take their place. When I wrote the first post, my hands shook over a rent spreadsheet and an HR memo. Today, my hands shake only when I forget lunch and drink coffee on an empty stomach. I can live with that version of shaking. I moved into a modest one-bedroom near my new office a week after the lease ended. The sublet I mentioned turned into a full lease once the building saw I pay on time and do not complain about the elevator. The first night I slept there, I kept expecting my phone to light up with a group chat screenshot or a new accusation about how I had turned love into math. The phone stayed still on the counter. I stood there a long time and looked at that quiet screen. Quiet looks like nothing from the outside. From the inside, it feels like the entire room finally remembered how to breathe. Work stabilized first. My new manager turned out to be exactly as advertised. He likes boring. He likes agendas that fit on one page. And he likes closing meetings 5 minutes early. On my third week, he asked how the HR situation ended at my old place. I told him the truth in 2 sentences. My partner disclosed a relationship with the manager who oversaw my performance. I reported the conflict and requested a reassignment. He nodded and said that was correct. Then he asked what I want to do on the new platform in Q2. That was the whole conversation. No gossip, no jokes, just a small door that opened to the next room where work lives. People asked privately whether there were consequences for my former manager. I do not have access to their HR file, and I do not need it. I know 2 things because they are public. First, he stepped down from managing people and now sits as an individual contributor in a separate business unit. Second, the company published a public-facing training module about reporting conflicts of interest that includes a scenario where a supervisor dates a direct reports partner and a peer requests reassignment. It was shared on the company's external blog, not just an internal LMS. The scenario ends with the peer reassigned and protected from retaliation. The voiceover says that early disclosure supports fairness, not revenge. I did not write that sentence, but I could have. It felt like hearing my own words in someone else's mouth and finally not needing to correct the tone. As for my ex, she moved through several short arrangements during the summer. I learned this the way you learn most things now, through a string of soft-focus photos and captions about honesty. She does not mention me directly. She still posts about paperwork people who fear feelings. Sometimes the comments get specific when a friend is feeling bold. Then the thread goes private. That dance does not require me. I do not follow the account anymore. I logged out and my day became a place where I live instead of a panel where I refresh. There was one attempt at a last rewrite of our history. In late spring, she texted from a new number to say she'd been thinking and wanted to apologize for how chaotic things got, while also adding that she hopes I learn to be less punitive with money. The sentence held 2 magnets that do not meet. I read it twice and sat with the urge to argue with the second part. Then I felt the size of my quiet, and I declined the debate. I replied with a one-line message. I said I accept that emotions were high, and I wish her well. That is true. It is also all that belongs to me. Family quieted too. My mother still believes that fairness is cold. She also now says I look rested when we FaceTime on Sundays. Both can be true. We have settled into a truce where we talk about the neighbor's dog and her new mint plant and avoid the topic of how men should lead. She sent me a tin of cookies in December with a note that said she is proud I bought a new sofa that matches nothing I owned before. I smiled at that because it is the most honest pride she knows how to send. It is pride through a catalog page. I can receive it without translating it into a sermon about heart. Progress sometimes looks like letting the postcard be a postcard. Financially, I am where I should have been all along. My savings plan resumed. I moved the folder of printed emails into a bank-safe deposit box and closed the loop with a short note to myself about where the key lies. I still print some things, but now it is a habit for taxes, not a life raft. When I file, I feel the same quiet as that first night with the still phone. Paper sits still when told to. That is what I needed to learn. Not every person will. The mutual friend group reshaped around absence. The birthday host who kept talking about the suitcase that split open host game nights now. I go when the schedule aligns. We do not talk about the bar entrance or the hand on the shoulder. We talk about a tiny hotel soap someone stole out of a sense of adventure. And we talk about a cat that refuses every bed but the laundry basket. Ordinary trivia returned, and with it a sense that my place in a room is not a seat under a spotlight, but an ordinary chair. Do I miss anything about the time before? I miss the way it felt to come home and believe dinner would be easy because someone I loved would stand in the doorway and tell me a story about their day. I do not miss the part where the doorway turned into a stage for speeches about growth that came with a bill. I have learned that love and money do not have to fight if the people involved respect that a budget is not a punishment. If the people involved do not respect that, a budget reveals it without needing a raised voice. The only thing I would change in my original timeline is how long I apologized for being orderly. If I could talk to that version of myself, I would tell him that clarity is not cruelty, and fair does not mean cold. I would tell him that HR exists so a person can do their job even when someone else wants a story to be a romance with no ledger. I would tell him that a mute button is not avoidance when the alternative is watching someone build a public bonfire out of your private furniture. Then I would tell him to go to bed because the trash will still be there in the morning and it weighs less after sleep. Closure for me looks like a calendar with regular boxes on it, no surprise labels, no emergency pickups, and no notes that say please confirm receipt written through gritted teeth. I still write please confirm receipt. Now I write it without apology. People either do or they do not. The rest of my day does not move around that choice. If you are reading this months after the first post and wondering what justice looks like, I will tell you plain. Justice is not a headline or a public shaming. Justice is my new manager saying 5 minutes early is on time. Justice is a signed lease that ends cleanly. Justice is a phone that does not light up at midnight. Justice is the quiet that you sit inside and realize you should have demanded years ago. I did not get revenge. I got my life back and I plan to keep it boring.